So President Biden has me saying once again, WTF, neoliberal.
We will now kneel.
Miss Cinema, no.
You have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
President Biden's cannabis pardons are a start. They are. Let me establish that right now. But they're only a start. And we are a long, long way from the finish line. And we don't have to be a long way from the finish line because the president has within his power right now through executive order to continue to push this. He could use the bully pulpit to continue to push Congress, have those conversations on the state level. More work needs to be done in an effort to undo or to make some crooked paths straight when it comes to the war on drugs. So let's put up this headline: marijuana pardons affect just a sliver of those swept up in the war on drugs. President Biden's pardons for thousands of Americans convicted of possessing marijuana don't apply to state charges or many immigrants at risk of deportation. So in a New York Times article, President Biden's decision last month to pardon thousands of people who had been convicted of marijuana possession under federal law was an acknowledgement that his administration does not see possession of cannabis with no intent to sell or distribute as a public safety net. So again, I want to be clear, it is a start. I will acknowledge that start, but why just stop there when we have so many more miles to go? And so many lives were destroyed because of the war on drugs that this president, yeah, I said this president has a particular responsibility to make some crooked paths straight. So more than 55% of the 7,800 citizens and legal permanent residents convicted of federal marijuana possession from 1992 to 2001 were Black or Hispanic. Most of the prosecutions for the drug have occurred in California, Arizona, and Texas. Nearly 150 people were sentenced in the federal prison system for marijuana possession in the 2021 fiscal year, while more than 1,000 offenders were sentenced for trafficking in marijuana. And it just don't understand why in the 21st century, in 2022, we're still doing that when so many states have already legalized marijuana. It is time for the federal government to get a clue. A majority of marijuana convictions have been state crimes, and that is one of the reasons why the president's power does not stretch to the state level, but certainly he could use the bully pulpit to continue to push and make this a number-one priority. So majority of marijuana convictions have been state crimes, which Mr. Biden does not have the authority to pardon. He can only hope that governors will follow suit. I think the president can do more than hope. He carries the biggest stick, so we can put some work, some sweat equity behind that hope. Furthermore, though, the pardons themselves do not cover people, immigrants. So there are immigrants who are being deported for possession of cannabis. They left out many immigrants. Let's take a look at this. But they left out many immigrants at risk of deportation because of marijuana convictions. Mr. Biden's order failed to instruct federal immigration authorities to stop deporting immigrants for possession of pot, according to a letter sent to Mr. Biden this month by dozens of civil and immigrant rights groups. So even this part right here, when we just look at immigrants, he has the absolute power to stop that on the federal level, but has not done so. And here is what some of the groups had to say in that letter to the president. You rooted the October 6th proclamation in the pursuit of racial equity, noting that Black and brown people have been arrested, prosecuted, and convicted at disproportionate rates. The groups wrote, yet you exclude Black and brown immigrants facing the same structural racism as United States citizens. So Jessica, it does seem that the president can do much more than what he's doing right now. I do want to acknowledge again the start, but I'm not, it's not floating my boat that much.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous that it was illegal in the first place to smoke weed, because when we think about what should be deemed a criminal activity in a society, usually it's something that hurts somebody else. No one is hurt from someone smoking weed. They might be hurting themselves a little bit because of their lungs, but it doesn't make you dangerous. It doesn't impact the people around you. So it shouldn't be illegal. So why was it illegal? Because police use this at their convenience. They would say, oh, you know what? I smell marijuana, and use it as a reason to stop and frisk people, eventually end up arresting them, just so that they could disproportionately arrest Black Americans, who are arrested 3.73 times that of whites for smoking marijuana. It's not that white people weren't smoking, it's just they were not getting arrested for it. So this is obviously a racial justice issue, and if we're going to correct it, we need to expunge everybody's records, pardon people and release them from jail, not just simple possession, but also those who are in jail for selling marijuana. Because if it's not hurting anybody and there's no reason it should have been illegal, there's no reason people should be in jail for simply selling marijuana. It doesn't make any sense, and these half-measure solutions to policy problems. The administration's doing this with student loan debt as well by only canceling, $10,000 to $15,000 or $20,000 of it when we should be canceling all of it and making public college free. These half measures don't make sense because they don't fully address the problems.
No, they don't. And it is a total disregard of the impact that these policies have had on individuals who have had to go to jail, state jail, or federal jail or prisons. It impacts them, their families, and their communities, and it does have a generational impact. And the president is out of step. So is all the other elected officials who want to be timid about whether or not we should legalize, decriminalize, and legalize marijuana. They are out of step with the American people. Not the first time, won't be the last time. But let's take a look at this headline. Support for legal marijuana inches up to a new high of 68%. And that is coming from Gallup. So thank you, Megan, for this wonderful article that you wrote. Gallup first measured the public's view of marijuana legalization in 1969, when 12% of Americans backed it. By 1977, support had more than doubled to 28%. It did not exceed 30% until 2000, but has risen steeply in the 2 decades since then, and is now twice what it was in 2001 and 2003. And so we do see clearly by the numbers, the math is mathing. Andrew Yang usually says the math ain't mathing. Right now, the math is mathing when it comes to how the American people feel about legalizing cannabis. So let's go ahead and do it. If the federal government descheduled cannabis and took it off of the schedule with heroin, that would go a long way in forcing and pushing these states to do more. It is nice to see that on the local level and also on the state level. Shout out to Oregon's governor, that some governors are taking matters into their own hands, but the federal government certainly carries the biggest stick and will have the greatest influence on whether or not we can erase the scourge of locking people up for partaking in the puff puff pass, and or, as you said, Jessica, selling marijuana. And let's put up the graphic though of the Gallup poll. I want people to see this. Steadily rising. Yes, legalize it. Do you think the use of marijuana should be made legal or not? And the American people are basically saying, hell yes. So to all the activist groups out there that have been working very hard to push not only this president, but this steady push decade after decade after decade, thank you so much for what you are doing, and do not give up, do not get weary in well doing, continue to push. And in the words of our dear friend, Michael Render, AKA Killer Mike, I want you to continue to plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize. The day is absolutely coming where marijuana will be legalized in this nation, but it won't be legalized out of the kindness of the hearts of politicians. It will be legalized because of activists and because of the American people.